A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Majurity Conversations 2024, Sussing Out Sustainability. How about a round of applause, please? My name is Edwin, and it's my pleasure to be with you this morning as your host. Now, in the next 2.5 hours, we will unpack the often used term today in the social sector, sustainability. Find out what sustainability looks like for social impact organizations. Explore what donors and funders mean when asking about organizational sustainability. And discover how you can chart the next steps to help your organizations thrive. Here to kickstart this year's Majurity Conversations, it's my pleasure to welcome on stage the CEO of the Majurity Trust. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Martin Tan.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me try that again. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. A warm welcome to Minister, our guest of honor, Mr. Edwin Tong, Minister for Culture, Community and Youth, and Second Minister for Law. A big round of applause for our guest of honor. Thank you for joining us, sir. Welcome to the Majurity Conversations. It's crazy when I think about where we first started. Our launch event was 2019 on the Majurity Conversation as well, and here we are, 2024. Every Majurity Conversation, we focus on a theme. Last year was about communicating impact. Today, the theme is about sustainability, sussing out sustainability. Normally, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about it in an environment form, right? In terms of environment, which is great, and climate is a major part of what we need to think about. But today, this morning, we're going to be talking about sustainability on the non-profit sector, our sector's point of view. What does it mean to build sustainable organization, which is a conversation both funders and leaders in the sector are all looking at. The question we'll be asking is, how do we build communities that are sustainable ecosystems? How do we build sustainable organizations that have enduring impact? How do we build systems and processes for a sustainable way of operating? And how do we measure sustainability in nonprofits? In working with donors, in working with governments, and in working with you as nonprofits and social sector organizations, this word comes out a lot. And we thought, why not have some of our leaders in this field to be able to share more? We have a panel of funders, we have a panel of people in the organization development space really to talk about it. So that's what we're going to spend our time this morning. Sussing out sustainability. For us, the Majurity Conversation is our way of bringing friends together across all the different sectors, be it private people and the public sector, to come together, have conversations around topics that matters to us. For us at the Majurity Trust, we find ourselves in a very interesting nexus beyond the 3P partnership. In working with private donors, we have over 450 donors that we work with, and many of them are here today. Thanks to their support, we can raise the resources needed for the sector on the ground through our various funds that we have, be it youth mental health or be it migrant workers, as well as dementia. And in working with different agencies, we've been able to bring things together. A key thing for us is this whole idea of ecosystem. How do we build a thriving ecosystem where it brings the best people to work with each other to achieve the best outcome that we can all have? Over the years, through our various programs, Majurity Conversation being one, Majurity Night with our donors, and we launched last year the Majurity Marathon. Some of you who are there, don't worry, as long as an organization is run by me, marathon does not equate running. The marathon equates food. So, and it's been great, the kind of relationship that we have with folks coming together, be it our donors for golf or be it for marathon coming. It's really about a thriving ecosystem that engenders conversations and collaboration. Because it's more than just a program. It's the conversation that you and I have on a regular basis that really moves the needle on this particular topic. Be it youth mental health, for example, or be it elderly dementia or caregiving. It's conversations that allow us to come up with innovative ideas. It's conversations that allow us to say, you know what, maybe we should work on this together, and that's where collaboration happens. As societal issues become more and more complex, we are clear about one thing: we can no longer do things alone. It is clear in our minds that a single agency, a single ministry, a single donor can no longer achieve the kind of impact we need, because you and I know societal issues are complex. When we solve one thing, it gives birth to another problem down the line. How do we meaningfully create change? So in our pursuit of doing philanthropy differently, our goal has been to build around the idea of philanthropy beyond just a checkbook, beyond just a grant, but to build an ecosystem that supports our grantee partners in ways that will give them the highest probability of success. So as part of what we do, we want to understand the needs and aspirations of our grantee partners. So a couple of years ago, every December, we started a grantee partner survey, and many of you, thank you very much for filling up the survey. It helps us. I know end of the year, everybody's going on holiday, so they're literally going on in their holidays, filling up the survey for us. It helps us understand where the sector is at and where our grantee partners. So these are just some very top-line numbers, which we'll share more in open in time to come. But these are the things that the assistance or non-monetary assistance that our grantee partners are asking us for. Be it facilitated collaboration or introduction to other leaders in the fields, marketing and publicity assistance, and so on. You will see beyond just the monetary side, how do we help with the organization development, be it user-centric services, strategy, leadership, or how do we help with people? Our master classes, which many of you are part of, our collaborative town halls are all our ways of being able to answer some of these needs and aspirations. One of them will be to provide research and monitoring evaluation advice. So in January this year, what we have done is to pull 11 of our grantee partners together. One of our research fellow, Dr. Kwan Ching Yao, who's based in Delaware, he comes back with us and works with us maybe twice in Singapore, but the rest of the time he spent about 2 days for us in Delaware to help us with our M&E work as part of our insights and strategy team. Coming together with our grantee partners to really think about monitoring evaluation. How do we do impact evaluation in a meaningful way? And we realize that the more we spend time with our grantee partners, the more time we spend with you, many of you in this room, the better we can collect the insights, the better we can do customized and purpose-fit frame. Because at the end of the day, our goal is to be able to do this on a longer-term basis in a way that we would term as evidence-based philanthropy. More and more donors are looking for data, but sometimes we don't know how and where to look. How do we actually do it? So we will learn together, and that's our commitment as an organization to you as grantee partners. We will learn together, we will learn with our partners, we'll learn with our donors, we'll learn with our government partners to find the best way for us to measure impact together. For us, our goal has always been since day one to tap on the power of the collective. Because an ecosystem that supports each other is what we are hoping for. An ecosystem that celebrates each other is what we are hoping for. It's not a competition about who gets more limelight. It's really about you as our grantee partners, you as our donors, you as the government stakeholders, collectively coming together and do good. And an ecosystem that watches out for each other. I like Naresh's quote and Joshua's quote in the papers today about how being part of the ecosystem allows them to actually watch over each other, to support each other. So for us, ecosystem is not a buzzword. Wait, hang on, these words are wrong. Ecosystem is not a buzzword. It cannot be. Ecosystem has to be the operating norm for us in this space. That no longer should we just journey on our own, alone and siloed, but how we can work together. So I'm very proud to be able to share some of the collaboration that we are bringing to the table. In November last year, we announced a partnership with Intellect, Asia's leading mental health platform. With them and with their support, we are making this mental health platform available to all our grantee partners over the next 2 years. Now our grantee partners have access to behavioral health coaches, licensed psychologists, self-guided content at their own time and at your own time, and all our grantee partners are here. Sometimes the work that you do, every dollar that you have, you spend your time and energy as grantee partners on the beneficiaries. Our hope as an organization is to make sure that we spend our time and attention on you. So the partnership with Intellect gives us that ability to be able to provide the mental health support for you, our partners, because it's time that we take care of the people who takes care of people. Second, Maybank has been a big supporter of what we have been doing with the Maybank Momentum Grant, up to $4 million now, who has been through the Maybank Momentum Grant to almost 17 grantee partners. And today, I'm really proud to be able to say that they are launching, Maybank is launching a Maybank Myimpact community package that is specifically tailored for the charity sector. Now, I'm not going to share too much details. I'm going to let Helena from Maybank come up in a bit to share a little bit more. But the partnership is really being able to take what we work with Maybank now on a much larger basis for the nonprofit sector as a whole to really optimize financial services for the charity sector. In this nexus, it's also really about bringing the government partners along together with us. And we have been really grateful for some of the partnership that we have with agencies, with NCSS, with the 4SD Partnership Fund that is really funded by ComChest and this SUTAT this year. Without them, we won't be able to co-administer the 4SD Partnership Fund, of which many of you, I see your faces, are part of that. Working together collaboratively to solve some of society's most pressing issue. With MOHT, we launched a Movement for Health Fund that really bring grassroots support to the health side of things in a particular geography across Singapore. Collectively, just within these two funds and partnership with government agencies, we have optimized about $4 million for our grantee partners in various parts of Singapore. That's the way we want to be able to do. The collective power, or tapping on the collective power to come together. And today's papers, and I think in March you will have heard, one of our things that we want to do is to bring this whole ecosystem under one roof, which is Foundry. Foundry is really our aspiration and our dream a couple of years ago to say, what if this power of collective can have a home? It's incredible what a dream can be, but a dream cannot come to light without the partners that we have. Come November, we'll be able to open our doors to the grantee partners that we have. Minister has been really supportive and met some of the enablers out there, and she will share a little bit more about Foundry. But I just want to take this opportunity for us to be able to thank our partners. Without our partners in SLA, with MCCY, with SGPO office, with Don's team, with Suin's team at Tote Board, and Colin is here, Colin's the CEO of SLA. Without their support, we would have never made this possible. So if you can do me a favor on behalf of the sector, I would love for you to thank our partners for helping us see this as a reality. I know my time is coming to an end, but I also want to thank the people who are helping us build this into a reality. We talk about this outside. We're really, really privileged to have WOHUB, JASCO, and WOHA as key partners in the build-up of this space. WOHA is our builders, JASCO is our space planners, and WOHA is our architects and QP. These are some of the biggest names whom, honestly, in my mind, I would have never imagined to have this possibility of working with them, let alone them coming in and say, you know what, this is an important part for Singapore. We're really happy to support. And together with them, we have our donors, like Holywell Foundation and the Kwan family, to kickstart the ball rolling, to raise the funds that's needed. And they're all in this room. Would you please help me give them a big round of applause? So, can I just say thank you to each and every one of you for in this space. Because Foundry for us really is captured in this phrase. It's from the community, it's by the community, it's for the community. And that's our aspiration, that's our hope. All we want to do is to be able to be the nexus across all the board, across the entire sector together. And we're happy to be launching end of November, so we'll keep building towards it, and we're really happy. Okay, yeah. Neil from WOHA is here. Yeah. Okay. Now you know the date is fixed. I got to get it done. This is what ecosystem is all about. I don't want to delay too much longer. All of you and many of you are in this photo. The ecosystem cannot thrive without all of us coming together. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone in this room, because the ability for us to journey with you is a trust that you have given to us. It's a trust that our donors have given to us. It's a trust that our government partners have given to us. But it's a trust that we have with each other. The trust that we want to be able to journey this together. That we have partners that we can count on, donors that we can rely on, and grantee partners we can walk on with. Because really in this space, no one ever walks alone in doing good. I see there are some menu fans here. But this is what it's all about. The ability for us to journey with each other and to tap on the power collective. And with that, can I just wish you a great round of conversations this morning? Please feel free to ask all the questions. We have great people on the panel. And just have a lively conversation. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Martin, for that very insightful and inspiring presentation. Thank you so much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to welcome on stage a Manchester United fan. Our guest of honor, Minister for Culture, Community and Youth, and Second Minister for Law, Mr. Edwin Tong.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, so I'm a Man U fan, right? I've been outed. But I must say that in the context of today's conversations, the "You Never Walk Alone" resonates with me, but only in the context of today's conversation. It is because there's an old African proverb, which you, I think, will remember. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I think that resonates with me, and in the context of that, that's the only time I'll say, Martin, I agree with you that you should never walk alone, but only in the context of today's conversation. Good morning, Mr. Martin Tan, CEO of the Majurity Trust and an old friend of mine. Thank you very much for doing what you do. Friends and colleagues in the social and community sectors. This morning I was really energized. I'm not usually energized after the day after a public holiday. But today I was very energized, probably because of the infectious energy that Martin had. Maybe the coffee was very good, which it was. But I think I was energized because of the conversations earlier. I just spent 20 minutes or so chatting with the people who make up the partners, the stakeholders, the grantees that Martin spoke about. And to listen to your stories, to listen to your motivation, and to understand the impact that you'll be making on society has been very energizing. And I think we are very lucky in Singapore that we can do this, coming together, whether it's 3Ps or 4Ps, all coming together, making sure that we are common in our objective, in impacting our community, and working together without trying to jostle with one another. And I think that's really the true value of today's conversations. Today's series of conversations, as you heard from Martin earlier, is aimed at trying to work out what sustainability means in the context of community building. And I think that's going to be a very important conversation because we all know what we need to do intuitively. But how do we make it long-term, lasting, going far, and going together is going to be really important. And I'm heartened as I look around the room, as I said in my conversations earlier, to see that this is really a ethos, a mind share that we all come together with. Singapore turns 60 next year. Almost 6 decades now of nation building. And as we approach this milestone, for us to want to look forward, it's also useful for us to reflect on the past 60 years and see what this journey has meant for us. What has it taught us? And through the Forward SG exercise, we have talked to a whole range of different Singaporeans from different walks of life, from stakeholder groups that we have perhaps not been engaged with in the past. And what emerged was a very clear picture of what our shared future in Singapore, as Singaporeans collectively together, we want to see. And I would say there are three main themes that came through all these conversations. The first is an opportunity for Singaporeans to chart their own path, to be the best they can be in the context of our society in Singapore. The second, that there's an assurance that every Singaporean will be taken care of at some stage when they need us the most in Singapore. And third, perhaps the most important, is that all of this is to be achieved via a collective responsibility from all stakeholders. It's not just the government, but also businesses, private sector, people, partnership, community groups, big ones and small ones as well. Many of you, of course, have been in this space for a long time, working towards one or more of these goals. And I'm very heartened to hear that, as I said earlier today, because a shared vision is really only realized when there is a shared action. At the same time, the government understands this and will not be standing still. I'll give you two examples. One, we've set up the partnership office. Don and the team have been very proactive in doing this. Partnerships on proposals, big and small, working with different groups in society. And the second, of course, is what we are doing together with Foundry and a range of other similar projects through SLA. Through SLA, we now no longer look at property or land as being something that we have to maximize financial return. But what's important for us in SLA is, can we realize something that benefits our community? Can we look at a piece of property and say, hey, if this makes a big social impact, let's look at social return as a return that we can measure our success on. And that's really the origins of why we have the Foundry, we have Vivita, we have a whole range of other projects that Colin and his team at SLA have been looking at. And this demonstrates our commitment to partnering with our citizens, working with our citizens through groups, through conveners and aggregators like the Majority Trust, to provide platforms and opportunities for different people, citizens, to come together to give back, and also for grantees to come and receive. I think that ecosystem that Martin spoke about is really important. The Majority Trust has been pushing the boundaries of social impact for some time now. And one example I was struck by was the Empowered Families Initiative, or the EFI. For the EFI, instead of seeing contributors and beneficiaries as two different social groups that are mutually exclusive, the contributors on one hand and then the receivers and the beneficiaries on the other, EFI recognizes that there is a commonality between the two groups. It isn't distinct. And so creates space for beneficiaries to themselves recognize their strength and ability to contribute. It looks at beneficiaries not just as people or persons or families who are receiving all the time, but in receiving, how can you scale up and give back in the same space? And I think that's really important. One of their program participants, Ms. Aziana Ahmad, lives with her husband and 7 children in a public rental flat. She had done so for 8 years. With support from Ms. Adriana Rasip and a team from EFI, Azliana was able to tap into her own strength, her own skills in the kitchen to grow her 2 home-based businesses selling Malay and Vietnamese fare. Last year, Azliana and her family were able to move into their own 4-room BTO flat in Sengkang. And today, Azliana contributes back to EFI, the contributor to her success. She was a beneficiary, but today she's contributing back to EFI, sharing her experiences with new participants of the program. And through funding support from the Majority Trust and other donors, EFI has supported 27 such families in using their strengths, their own focus, their goals, their aspirations, with more in the pipeline. And I think this and many others are great examples of what we can do if we do it together, the point I made at the start. When beneficiaries themselves give back to the very initiatives that set them on their path to success. And you will, in the course of this morning's conversations, get a chance to hear more from all of them, both Adriana as well as RFI, during the panel segment earlier. But the lesson to be learned from all of this is that all of what I've just said is achievable only because of the combined efforts. When people put aside their own personal preferences and their own personal objectives, but come together and figure out what's best for our community, what's best for the common good of this program. And that brings me to my next point. That old saying, I'm a bit full of old sayings today, that old saying that communities are built at the speed of trust. I think many of you would have heard that, many of you operate in the space, and many of you live by this adage. In other words, the greater the trust, the stronger and more sustainable the impact that we can make to the community. Indeed, trust is the currency that brings communities together and what keeps them resilient. It is a key ingredient in the sustainability of impact organizations. Take charities, for example. One big impedance to why people might be wary of charity, even if they're able to contribute, would be, do I trust that charity? Do I trust where my dollar goes? Do I trust who receives that dollar? Because it's not just about giving, it's about who you give to and the trust that we can engender and generate. Trust is also the key ingredient in our nation building, and the building of shared goals, mutual trust between citizens and the government is paramount. Singapore's success has been built on this trust, and I don't think I can overstate this enough or say this enough. The trust that we had in each other as we navigated COVID, as one of very, very few nations that emerged from COVID stronger in unity than before. Not many nations achieved this, but we did so because in good times, in pre-COVID times, we built up the trust. We were open, citizens were open, and we navigated the process and the crisis with a lot of trust. So on this score, I'm glad that the Majority Trust, and trust is really your middle name here, in convening today's conversations to grow this trust, to talk about what it means to have trust, and to talk about what it means to build trust, by developing and advancing our understanding of social impact and philanthropy. I think all the more this conversation is particularly important in this space, in trying to grow social impact and to look at philanthropy in the next bound. Indeed, philanthropists and funders have a strong influence on community organizations. The decisions you make, the development, what projects to support, how you survive and how you thrive, all this makes a big impact. And the Majority Trust's commitment to sparking conversations around philanthropy differently, you heard Martin earlier, in a very purposeful focus on the objective and people-centered is very laudable. The reality is that stakeholders within the same ecosystem, and that's to borrow Martin's word, do operate through different lenses. We all come from different spaces, we have different expertise. You saw the list of different stakeholders earlier, JustCo, WOHA, WOHUB, coming from different spaces. But for the purposes of a project like the Foundry, coming together, working together, and building the Foundry, literally building the Foundry for a common good. The Majority Trust calls all of these intermediaries sector enablers, organizations that operate at the intersection of two or more stakeholder groups. And sector enablers exist to serve other social impact organizations and help them do their work better by becoming an effective bridge between the different stakeholder groups. For instance, donors want accountability on how their funds were used, whilst social impact organizations may not always have the bandwidth to provide extensive reporting in this area. I think there's a gap. And as I said earlier, if you don't know or trust where your dollar goes to, there's always a little bit more resistance and reluctance in giving. So we have to bridge this gap. A sector enabler, such as the Insights and Strategy team at the Majority Trust, is able to work with both stakeholders to measure their effectiveness, working closely with other sector enablers in this room, present in this room, such as Talent Trust, Better.SG, Ray of Hope, and Within Studios. Each of these different sector enablers bring their own skill sets, their whole experience, because they are the experts in that space, their different expertise, bring it to bear on capacity building, on technology, on crowdfunding, and branding. So these are all different skill sets, different areas, but come together at the intersection of what benefits our community, our beneficiaries. You can see that it levels up, and together they become stronger than the sum of their parts. It is therefore important that we have these sector enablers to increase the longer-term sustainability and strengthen the efforts of community groups and impact organizations. They provide services that help to bridge the gap between stakeholders, fostering that trust, deepening that trust, and in turn strengthening the relationships in the process, which then actively builds sustainability. Let me speak a little bit about a Foundry. About a month ago, during the annual budget community of supply debates, my parliamentary colleague SPS Rahayu Mazam, she spoke about the Majority Trust with the support of SGPO and Tote Board and their efforts in setting up the Foundry. This is also, as you heard from Martin in the news recently. Foundry is a social impact hub that will gather non-profit startups, social impact organizations and partners at the former Prinsep Street Election Department office building. This is a site that SLA has repurposed for community service purposes. And as I said earlier, one of the objectives of SLA is to look at these sites, even if it's for a short interim use. Sometimes the master planner might not need it for another 10, 12, 15 years. In the interim, what can we do with it? How can we activate the space? And how can we use it to create social impact? And so the Foundry will serve as a base for social impact organizations to work together, come together to spark conversations, to incubate ideas, drive impactful innovation, build communities. Earlier on when I was chatting with people designing Foundry, they were saying, we want to design it in a space where you can work, but you can also crisscross with one another. You can have what they told me were water cooler conversations. I don't know whether water coolers are still the in thing nowadays. But water cooler conversations, you know what I mean? Unintended conversations. As you're on your way, to the loo or off to the pantry or at the water cooler, or you might, meet at the front door for lunch. All these are unintended conversations, but they drive collaboration. They give you an experience of meeting and chatting with someone from a different sector altogether, but thinking what can we do to use the experience and knowledge of different people from different sectors to come together to make good. In time to come, the Foundry network will comprise over 20 non-profit startups and social impact partners, many of whom have already been funded by the Majority Trust today. And they will come together, they'll curate, they'll design, organize activities for civic participation, and placemaking. And what I like about the Foundry's plans also is that nice building you saw earlier, the first floor of that 3-story building will be made publicly accessible so that any citizen who wants to get involved with addressing social issues or feels that they can contribute to part of the work that the Majority Trust champions, that the Foundry champions, can step in and find like-minded people and organizations to partner with. The Majority Trust has already been running a pilot of the Foundry over the last 3 years. So the building might be new in November, but the ideas, the system, the networks are not new. But coming together in a physical space, as you heard from Martin earlier, being co-located in a space with other non-profit startups, founders, and so on, provides a system of support from fellow founders and partners. Having access to such a seamless ecosystem of support has seen budding non-profits such as the Tapestry Project grow into being a registered charity serving a community of 25,000 people. That's the kind of impact that this kind of collaboration can make. The partnership to set up Foundry is exactly what we want to see happen and replicate across different parts of Singapore. Individuals, corporates, organizations from the private sector coming together with people, with talent, the government supporting it, together, as I said, becoming greater than the sum of its parts. Building a Foundry is not just about a physical space, but about a mind share and ethos that all 3 Ps come together to really make happen and realize. Indeed, earlier in January, the Tote Board, Temasek Foundation, and NBPC launched the Building All Ground Ups for Success Together, or in Singapore, we love our acronyms. So Building All Ground Ups for Success Together spells Bagus. And so it's Bagus Together, which is a great acronym. And the purpose of Bagus Together was to recognize the efforts of ground-up groups, those that sprout from the ground. So you can have organized activities, organize the ecosystem from the top. But you can also have from the ground up, sprouting up different ideas. And the great benefit of having these ground-up organizations is they can fit into the spaces that they see are the underserved, because they look from it from a different perspective. And we work with them, we partner with them, and we help to ensure that then no sector of society, as far as we can help it, gets ignored. And that our policies might be well designed, but sometimes it's hard to reach right to the bottom. And so we have people from the bottom telling us, hey, what about this sector? Or hey, how about this group? Maybe we can make some adjustments. And that's what the beauty of Bagus Together is all about. And through these efforts, the government commits to the shared vision for all Singaporeans. The vision that I spoke about at the outset, the new compact we want to build arising from Forward SG. Regardless of who they are, people can have a wider opportunity to give back to society. Let me now conclude. I borrow a point from Martin earlier, which I've been doing throughout my speech. Societal issues have been and will become increasingly complex. There is no one silver bullet to any single societal issue. And we all need to know that we can't do this alone. Increasingly, that has been the case, but in the future, there will be even more so. And we need to come together with a mindset and a mind share that we need to come together to work together and level up so that we are all stronger and better together. So on this score, I want to express my immense gratitude to the Majurity Trust, to the Tote Board, to the SLA, and to the SGPO, and all the other many corporate and social impact partners, every one of you in that ecosystem who will join hands to make the Foundry a reality. But remember what I said, the Foundry is not just about a physical space, even though it looks nice. And I think with all the efforts, it will look nice. But it is what it represents that is the most important. It is a physical representation of what we believe ought to be the philosophy and ethos of building community together in Singapore. Everyone coming in to play a part, sharing, crisscrossing, exchanging ideas, being generous with their experience, and together focusing on the common good in Singapore. So thank you very much for inviting me here this morning, for really energizing me. I wish all of you a tremendous morning with lots of good conversations, and hopefully you can level up and build on and stand on each other as shoulders of giants to make Singapore an even stronger, more inclusive, and accessible community for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. We'd like to request that you remain on stage to present tokens of appreciation to our Foundry partners and donors who have contributed towards making Foundry a reality. And you won't be standing on stage alone. We have a Liverpool fan joining us. Hi, Martin. Over here. He's here. So right now, please join me as we invite on stage WarHub's Executive Director, Neil Yong. For the guidance and steady hands in the building process to get Foundry ready. Please remain on stage. Next, we have Justco's co-founder and Chief Commercial Officer, Kong Wan Long, for being generous with their time and skills in the interior design and layout of Foundry. Next, please welcome on stage the Director of Holywell Foundation, Chan Chia Lin, for being one of Foundry's first founding donors. Next, we have the Director at WOHA, Chan E. Man, for generosity in providing architectural support. Let's give them all a round of applause, but please do remain on stage. Now, at this point in time, we'd also like to acknowledge and invite our key partners that have supported the vision of For Foundry to join us for a group photo. Please welcome on stage Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, Singapore Government Partnership Office's Coordinating Director, Don Yip, Singapore Land Authority's CEO, Colin Low, Tote Board's Senior Director of Grants, Tan Su Yin, and from the Kwan family, Kevin Kwan. Let's give them all a big round of applause, please. Big smiles, as they all say in the photography industry, stomach in, chest out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and thank you, Minister. We're gonna do a Wi-Fi. We're gonna get everybody. So everybody, you are in the Wi-Fi. So please stick your head forward. Okay, let's see. Okay, looks good, looks good. All right, smile, everybody. Thumbs up one more time. Awesome. Well done, everyone. Thank you, Minister, partners, and donors. Now, as you can see, Foundry is taking shape because of the many hearts and hands that have come together to make it a reality. As the home for collective impact, Foundry still needs funders and partners who can come on board.
This is Foundry, a home base for collective impact, where conversations meet collaboration and inspiration meets action. This is Foundry, a space to meet, to create, a base to ideate, to collaborate. This is Foundry, a community forged with a collective identity. People who dream, who donate, who deliver, and who do. A community that sees the gaps, fills them, and never lets you walk alone. This is Foundry, forging collective impact from the community, by the community, for the community.
Okay, coming right up is our first panel discussion on sustainability in community building, moderated by Senior Director Philanthropy at the Majurity Trust, Charles Tan. But before we dive into the panel, we'd like to invite on stage the Head of Strategy, Maybank Singapore, Helena Uy, to share more details on the Myimpact product that we mentioned earlier on, a suite of banking and financial solutions designed to support non-profit organizations in Singapore to grow and improve operational efficiency. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Helena.
Hi, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and Selamat Hari Raya to all of those who are celebrating. Firstly, thank you for this opportunity for me to represent Maybank and share a little bit more about the ethos behind Maybank's Myimpact Community Package. So, Maybank is a bank that has been deeply rooted in Singapore's financial landscape since 1960, and over the years, we have established ourselves within the community and have since been widely considered as the local foreign bank. At Maybank, for us, sustainability isn't just a buzzword. It's a fundamental pillar of our corporate ethos. And guided by our mission of humanizing financial services, we've embarked on a journey to create a lasting positive impact on both our operations and the communities we serve. Our sustainability commitments are not mere statements. They are actionable goals that we aim at generating meaningful and measurable change. One such commitment revolves around uplifting the communities we operate in. Take, for instance, our groundbreaking partnership with the Majurity Trust on the Maybank Momentum Grant, the first recyclable grant in Singapore. Through this initiative, we are now supporting over 17 charities and impacting the lives of more than 22,000 beneficiaries. Inspired by this success, we continuously explore innovative ways to leverage our strengths and expertise in supporting the non-profit sector. Through our engagements and learnings with our grantees as well as the Majurity Trust, we have gotten a much better understanding of the kind of banking support that our grantees need, which would then also extend to the larger charity community. We listened, learned, and that's how we came about with the Maybank Myimpact Community Package, a bespoke offering designed exclusively for non-profit organizations. Grounded in our ethical banking approach called Myimpact, this package embodies the financial inclusion needed to serve and address the needs of all segments, including the underserved and the non-profit sector. So some of the key benefits that our Myimpact Community Package will include a time deposit and current account bundle with preferential interest rates, because we understand that a lot of our grantee partners need help in terms of growing their assets and reserves. Secondly, support on PayNow collection capabilities to be able to assist with digital fundraising. Access to our Maybank Momentum Grant, our recyclable grant to support and scale operations of smaller charities. And I think most importantly, as we've heard today around ecosystem and not walking alone, opportunity to join the networking sessions with fellow nonprofits and experts like the Majurity Trust to learn and leverage off the collective wisdom, knowledge, and experience of this community. So in conclusion, I'd like to invite each of you to scan the QR code behind me, leading you to our webpage where you can learn more about this Maybank Myimpact Community Package. My team member Russell and I will also be around if you have questions during the breaks later, if you have any questions. So together, let's embark on a journey towards a more sustainable and inclusive future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helena. Now, for your information, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a booth set up outside later where you can speak and learn from the Maybank team. So right now, we'd like to invite our panel speakers up on stage. Please join me in welcoming Don Yip, Coordinating Director, Singapore Government Partnerships Office, MCCY. Hello, Don. We have Adriana Rasip, Co-Founder, Empowered Families Initiative. Come on stage. Yep. Hello. We have Yvonne Xiao, Community Builder and Co-Founder of Playpen, Head of One Side Essilor Luxottica Foundation. Let's give her a big hand. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please take out your mobile phones now and get ready to scan the QR code in your program and on screen to access the Q&A Mentimeter. Right now, our moderator, Charles. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Alvin.
All yours.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Delighted to be here. And thank you so much for spending time the morning with us. It's always amazing every year to bring partners together, right? This panel, we're going to talk about sustainability in community building. Right? What is a thriving community? How do we leverage the strengths as well as the assets of community members that we work with, right? And when I think about, and before we introduce the panelists, I was thinking about all of you in the room, right? Our friends, donors, partners, grantee partners. All of you are our community. So, do me a favor. Can I invite everyone to take a look at the room around you? Find someone to your left and right, preferably someone you have not met before, and tell them, thank you for being part of the community. Thank you for being part of the community. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll have a wonderful next few hours to build community together. But allow me to now introduce our panelists, and I want to dive right into the conversation because we got a lot of ground to cover. So let's start with Adriana. She's the co-founder of Empowered Families Initiative. Minister shared a bit about her story, working with families and really investing in the aspirations of lower-income families through grants, savings matching programs, and peer support collectives. They're one of the startup non-profits that's supported by the Lam Soon New Horizon Fund. And really their goal is one that we resonate deeply with, right? How do we leverage strengths assets of lower income families to improve their quality of life? Welcome, Adriana. And Yvonne. Yvonne is a co-founder of Playpen, Play for Good, a social movement that originated from Peace Center, and head of One Side, Excelozotica Foundation. PMT was very privileged to work with Yvonne and the team at Playpen to run a ground-up day, end of the year last year. And I got to see firsthand how she rallied the community. Oh my, she has a lot of stories coming your way. So I wouldn't steal the limelight first. Thank you, Yvonne. And of course, Dawn, someone who needs no introduction. Dawn is Coordinating Director, Singapore Government Partnerships Office at the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth. The newly established office spearheads deeper government people engagement and partnerships in Singapore. And we're really thankful. It is Dawn and team that really allowed us to make Foundry an idea to reality together with our partners, SLA, Tote Board, and all the other corporate partners coming together. So would you join me to just welcome our panelists? So I encourage everyone to use Mentimeter to share your questions, what's on your mind. I'm sure this is a topic that resonates with a lot of us in the room, right? How do we think about sustainability in the context of community building, right? How do we enable communities to tackle challenges on the ground by harnessing assets and strengths? Secondly, what must we invest in to create a thriving ecosystem for social impact? And as challenges in society becomes more intense and complex, how can social impact organizations really work together as a community by leveraging partnerships? So allow me to just share, when we think about thriving communities in Majurity Trust, I think there are three things that come to mind, right? How do we define a thriving community? One, people feel that they're connected, right? There's a sense of belonging. And secondly, people, because they feel that they belong, they contribute their voice. And lastly, with that voice, it leads to action, right? People coming together to help one another, to be part of the solution, not just asking for support, right? But helping one another. I think that, to us, is a thriving community. And why is community building important, especially in this next phase of our nation? I think one, as we think about our community here in Singapore, sometimes we question, are we becoming more individualistic? Or are we coming together more as a community? The sense of we, right? Not just I. And two, I think as Minister and Martin have shared also, as problems become more complex, solutions perhaps really are best found within the community, right? So how can we harness that? And lastly, as we help one another, perhaps that also reduces the need for us to step up more and more formal services, right? We think about all the social service programs that have been ramping up as our society ages and so on. But perhaps if we help another, there's a different way we can think about the help ecosystem. And with that, we're going to launch into our conversation. We have 3 gurus. I really look up to each and every one of them. And how we're going to do it is really to allow them a couple of minutes to share their perspective, right, from where they work. And we're going to use the frame of a macro, meso, as well as a micro lens, right? At the macro level, when we think of policy, when we think about, government to people, private relationships, how do we view that? At a meso lens between organizations, as well as at a micro lens on the ground. So, allow me to start with Dawn. So, it looks like with the start of SGPO and of course a lot of the work that your team is doing, there's a shift in the role of government as well towards being more community focused. Could you share more?
Yeah, thanks very much, Charles, and good morning, everyone. It's really a thrill for me to be here. I was actually here at your last Majority Conversation, had a great time just listening and learning, sitting in the audience. I didn't think that the next year I'd be sort of sitting up here. So it's a very different vantage point here, and thank you for the privilege of just sharing a little bit about my thoughts at the macro level. I really bear this great burden. I feel like, I'm representing government here. So please just take this as a more personal lens. It's terrifying to sort of be the government rep on a panel like this. But I do think it's fair to say there's a big shift that's going on in government in the way we think about our governance approach. And the big shift we're making is from consultation to also co-creation and collaboration. Okay, those are very big words. When we say consult, it means getting the citizens' views and feedback on what's going on. And we must do that, and we must continue to do that. But over the last few years, you've seen the government make a very concerted effort to also co-create and collaborate with citizens and other stakeholders. That means inviting them into the action as well for their ideas and for them to take action. So not just getting views, but also inviting them in. And that lines up very well with, I think, the elements you mentioned of good community, right? Connected, contributing your voice, and then also taking action. So that's the shift we're making. Minister earlier mentioned the Forward Singapore exercise. Over 16 months, the 4G leadership and a whole bunch of civil servants behind the scenes, myself included and my team, were very intensively engaging with citizens on the ground to get a sense of what citizens in Singapore want to see for the future of Singapore, in particular how we relate to each other, our social compact. And one of the themes that came up very strongly was this desire, indeed, for us to make the shift. So it was very much affirmed by what came up through the Forward Singapore exercise. And I'll sum it up in this one line that was in the Forward Singapore report. I know most people don't read reports. This is a 180-page report. I don't blame you if not read it. But I do have a favorite line from that report. And the line sums up the shift we're making, which is a Singapore that is less about I, me, and mine, and more about we, us, and ours. So really that's the big shift that's going on. So let's get practical. What does that really mean? Really nice big words, but is it really happening? I will confess to you readily, it is not an overnight journey. It's a difficult one. Government has to learn new ways of working, as do all of us here in the room. So on the government side, what's happening is practically we're opening up more space for citizens and stakeholders to get involved. It comes down to very practical things like the creation of new parks and getting the citizens who live in the vicinity of the park to actually come and contribute ideas of what they want to see and even maybe build and plant elements of that park. In public health materials, we've invited citizens in to help co-design so that the public health materials make sense for the people who are using the material. And even in the design of government portals, including my own Singapore Government Partnership Office portal, getting citizens in to help us co-design. Further upstream, we've got things like hackathons, citizen panels, and a creation called the Alliances for Action. Really, it's about multi-stakeholder collaboration platforms. And these are opportunities where citizens can come in and not just give feedback and suggestions, but also work through ideas, come up with prototypes, and put them in place. So these are all new mechanisms that the government is implementing. We're still in the early days, I would say. Maybe some of you in this room have been part of these efforts. Sometimes you see like, this facilitator not very good, like talking too much, I'm not really getting my view in. So I have to readily admit, on the government end, we're still learning to do this. My team and I at MCC are really working hard to also grow the capability of the government to do this. But it's something we're very determined to work on. It also means on the citizen side and the stakeholder side, all of us learning to do new things well. And for that, I really have to just reiterate my gratitude to an entity like the Majurity Trust that has been so innovative in trying to build capability in an ecosystem way, and the work that you're doing at the Foundry. So I would say these are the two angles that are practically enlivening what we're saying about the shift from consultation to co-creation. And the last thing I'll say is just SGPO, right? Just a little bit about what we do. We were launched on 19th January this year. And our promise here is that for co-creation, usually the government still has a lead role in opening up space. We're going to engage you on parks. We're going to engage you in this policy. But with the launch of SGPO, we now have a platform to say, don't wait for the government to tell you when you can co-create with us. If you have an idea, come to our platform, sgpo.gov.sg, and you'll find some resources there that will guide you through. And if really none of the resources make sense to you, just fill out this form, put in your proposal, and we'll do our best to help you bring it to life in some form or another, and at very least have a conversation with you so that we get a sense of what you're trying to do and help you along your way. That's the promise. Again, also be patient with us. We're learning to do this. It's not just SGPO, it's the whole of government trying to come together to do this. And so this is the commitment we're making now, and I hope that really helps to build us towards this community sustainability that we're talking about.
Thank you, Dawn. As you were sharing the plug, I see a lot of people already putting in requests. sgpo.gov.sg. Your team will be wondering, wow, why is there a surge of ideas today? Over to Yvonne. Given your experience at Playpen and galvanizing the community, what does sustainability in community building look like to you?
Thanks, Charles. So I do have a day job, and you know what they were talking about, Playpen is really a social experiment that I set up with Gary Hong. But before that, I need to pay my bills, right? In social sector, we all know the minute you go into charity, forget it, take off 40% from your existing pay, because my boss told me 10 years ago that no promotion, no pay raise, you got to be happy and passionate about what you do. So passion has honestly kept me alive for the last 10 years. But increasingly after the COVID, I realized that this single narrative of asking people to sacrifice your career, your happiness, is not enough to bring us to the next level. So that's why, together with, my best buddy, Gary Hong, we did a really crazy social experiment at Peace Center. It is a soon-to-be demolished, more 50-year-old. Some journalists calls it very creepy, right? So yeah,
it is creepy.
And Martin, me and Gary really literally had to walk alone because nobody wanted to go into Peace Center and that crazy experiment that we did. So why did we do this? Because we realized that we had to bring the communities together. And we need to build trust. We need to build trust really quickly because all the challenges, in today's society is so complex that no one single agency have the full suite of solution. And how do we do this? We have to do this through play, right? Because play is one single thing that I think most of us have forgotten to do as we grow up. In fact, just very recently, United Nations announced that on 11th of June every year, we should signal the importance of play by having an International Day of Play. And that was really, really what we did at Peace Center. We took this creepy thing, we galvanized the collective wisdom of the whole community. We have musicians, artists, Web3 guys, AI, schools, everything. Okay, whatever you literally think of, they come together for one purpose, to reimagine how they give back through play. Because we need this new power of energy. We need to build this trust because most of the time, we are one man take all. If somebody is number one, everybody else is number two or nothing. So we need to build this social currency and trust through play. And with that is how we get people to reimagine how they, spruce up the space. And in the culture of this spruce up space, that is where we infuse the culture of giving back by having fun. So although, I must admit that in the beginning, it was really tough, right? I mean, Gary and myself, we were the plumber, the aircon broke down, we had the aircon fella. When black, stuff started coming out from the ground, him and me would just roll out our sleeves and literally deal with the rats that drop off from the ceiling. And every imaginable thing. And one day, I looked at Gary and said, seriously, do we really have to go down this road? And he says, yeah, we need to do this for the community, because if we don't, who else will do it? So, my best friend said, okay, let's do something crazy. Honestly, if I had thought about this, if I had used my brain, I would never have believed him, but we use our hearts, right? We use our hearts because we realize that the community needs to grow, and we need to make this not as an experiment, but as a movement that people can come together, contribute, not as competitors, but really as fellow do-good, right? And I'm so glad that Majurity came in time after time after time to help us with this whole project. Temasek Shop House, they came in with their jamming. And on the last day finale, it was so grand. We had almost 3,000 people. I already forgotten how many press coverage we have, because every single youth, very young journalist came forward and says, you know what? I need to help you guys tell the story, because it's no longer Gary, Yvonne, or Playpen's story. It is our story. It is a made in Singapore proud story that we need to tell together. So I think we probably did quite well. That's why they asked me to share with you. But what? Thank you. But what has gotten us so far will not get us into the future. And we need to recognize this, all right? So that's why, thank you so much, Martin, Charles, Kai, all of you, all of us sitting here, for giving a piece of ourselves to really understand how can we deal with this complexity and do this together with scalability and with big impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. And thank you for showing us what community building looks like. Show of hands, how many of us had an opportunity to visit Playpen when they were up? Quite a number. So you know what Yvonne is talking about when she says it was pretty chaotic. Right?
That's an understatement.
And now I'm hoping that at Foundry we don't have rats falling from the ceiling. The imagery is very powerful and terrifying. We'll now have Adriana to share. Let's turn our attention to the micro lens. And how does community sustainability look like to you as you work with many of the vulnerable communities?
All right, thank you, Charles. So maybe just for the benefit of everyone who don't know what EFI is about, maybe I'll just give a bit of a context. So Empowered Families Initiative is a developmental initiative that aims to invest in the aspirations and goals of low-income families in order for them to be able to improve their quality of lives. So instead of starting from the premise that low-income families are needy or they're just recipient of services, EFI aims to shift this by looking at families with, they're very enterprising. They're just people like you and I with ideas, with aspirations, just that maybe they have lesser resources. So we start working with families on that premise, on that lens, right? So how EFI works is that it works on a 6-month iteration, and yes, there's a 3-pronged approach. The first approach is grants, where we look at awarding grants to families based on the goals that they have for themselves, customized to their own circumstances. The second pillar is actually savings matching. So when the families contribute $100 in savings, we actually match $200 in savings. The third pillar is actually the peer support collectives. And I think this third pillar is the one that actually contributes largely to the sustainability, community sustainability that we're talking about. So I think just to share, it's not a joke, but I think a lot of people ask me, what's the name of your organization or entity? I said Empowered Families Initiative. Then they'll be like, oh no, that's the name of your program, your organization. I'm talking about your organization. My organization is Empowered Families Initiative. So actually it's not, so initiative, it's actually a word play. It's not just about describing it as a program, but actually how the word initiative itself actually describes that the efforts under EFI is largely driven by the efforts of families themselves. So that's a word play. Just a trivia. In case you all are wondering and wondering whether it's an organization or it's an initiative name, it's actually the name of our organization. It's very intentional that it's named that way. I think through the group support. So what happens, I think you might have a question, what happens during these peer support collectives? As part of the iteration, one of the requirements is that families have to journey with one another on the goals that they have set. So it's actually for a period of 6 months, and families will have to meet monthly. And during these meetings, what they do is actually share the goals that they have, share the progress of the goals that they have, what they have made throughout the past month, the challenges that they face, and also they bring up the challenges so that they can actually co-solution with one another how to actually overcome these challenges. And the meetings also becomes a platform for families to exchange resources and also collaborate with one another towards the goals that they have. So I think the question is that, relating to the question of you asking about, how is this related to community sustainability? So these peer support collectives where families journey with each other and collaborate with each other on their goals, there's 3 things that these peer support collectives actually foster. So first is, there's 3: ownership, relationships, and also contribution. So when families actually meet, right, in the peer support collectives, what they do is, other than sharing about their progress, the challenges that they face, I think once they actually got into the rhythm of how the meetings look like, we actually encourage them to be co-facilitators, to drive that conversations among the families themselves. Right? So what you see happening is that families taking ownership of this process of change, while the EFI team or so-called professionals, practitioners actually step back and let families drive this change among themselves. So first is ownership. Secondly, it's relationships. So through these group meetings, they're able to form relationships with one another that even continue after they have graduated from EFI. So we still have families on the first and second iteration who still meet up regularly, and they also help each other out beyond their goals, right? So they even look out for each other's kids as well. Even beyond the initiative. So I think there's a sort of an effect even beyond EFI. The third one is contribution. So I think a point that we do, something that we actually take note of is that we always check in with families at the end of one iteration, a 6-month iteration, to ask them actually how was their experience like, right? So I think the feedback that we got, what's striking is that the families said that they are so happy that they're able to contribute to each other's goals and progress, right? They're able to push and nudge each other, that they feel that they want to do more. After this iteration, they don't want to just stop and not do anything. They want to contribute and actually contribute to co-shaping and co-designing EFI as well. So what happened is that we create spaces, intentional spaces for the families, though we call them the EFI alumni, to actually contribute back to the families who's on future iteration. So some of our EFI alumni actually come back as mentors and also co-facilitators for the new group of the EFI iteration. Other than that, we also create a bigger space for them. So other than just contribution, we give them a seat at the table. So how does this look like actually? As part of the EFI process and the application selection process, there's also people who apply to be on EFI have to go through an interview process. And then what we did was that we sat down with the EFI alumni and we tapped on the lived experience of having gone through EFI and being families with goals to work on. We asked them actually, what are some of the qualities that you like to look at for future EFI rounds that would be very suitable for EFI, for them to benefit from EFI. So we actually sat down together, literally sat down together in a circle and actually listed down all the different qualities. And we actually debated and argued about what qualities as a way to assess families to come on board EFI. So really about decision making, and we bring the EFI alumni onto interview panels with the future EFI applicants so that they can also share about their experience and also ask questions from their own perspective that myself and also my team not able to see. Maybe some blind spots that we're not able to pick up. And other than that, we also fund initiatives by EFI alumni. So I think just now Minister Edwin talked about Azliana. So Azliana is an EFI alumni. She already graduated from an iteration of EFI, and she actually feels a lot for families with goals on home-based businesses. So she says that a way to support these home-based businesses towards their goal and to push them to even progress is to organize a bazaar or a platform or booths for families to be able to showcase their business and gain some visibility and also sell their products. Right. So what she did was actually recently on 30th March there was a Ramadan fiesta which was really just organized by her, and we basically just came in to support with a bit of funding and resources that she requested. So I think at the crux of EFI, it's really about families articulating what matters to them, what matters to their thriving, and EFI come alongside that goals and invest in these goals so that families feel that they are empowered to make decisions and what's best for the community.
Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all you're doing for the families. I'm looking at the questions and I want to dive right into some of the questions that have come up. And I think in any conversation about community building, there's a very Singaporean question that always appears, which is when we do community building, we're always thinking about it in a particular setting, and sometimes it's quite limited in terms of scale, right? So there's always this question about how do we then take what we have done, say in Playpen or in some of the EFI families, how do we actually think about scale up, right? Or is it even the right question to ask, right? How should we be thinking about scaling in the first place? Because sometimes we have the tendency of thinking about scaling in a very corporate business kind of a frame. Love to hear from the panelists to this very commonly asked question, how do you scale? And what does scale look like to you? Anyone?
Maybe I'll start, right? So I think, there's so many problems that exist today, right? And it is really tough to ask everybody to be on the same page, supporting one single mission and one single cause. So, what we have done at Playpen, right, was really to decentralize and to have conversations with thought leaders and change makers who are willing to give a little bit of whatever resources they have, be it time, talent, space in that sense, and allow each of us to deal with, whatever issues that we have. So like to Adriana's point, right, we have a lot of bazaar thrifting, okay? Because, the kids love thrifting and it's all about being positive people, planet, recycling and stuff. So one group of them took this. Another group that's very passionate and thinks that, AI is going to change the world. I'm so passionate and I have the expertise to really push the needle on this. Since Playpen at Peace Centre has a very nice stage, let me champion this cause. So in that space, right, at every different time bell on the weekends, different genre, different people, different causes, different communities come to collaborate on a very, very frequent basis. And that's why ended up, like what Charles said, it was chaotic. It was. I'm surprised we actually have our own wrestling match. Can you beat that? Like, where in the world in Singapore you have wrestling match? And we recently had like a playback theatre. I mean, like the first that, we have seen. And it's really, really happening because all of us needs autonomy of some sorts because we are aligned based on our different values and all that. And once we are able to give that platform, right, and have a common playground foundry, for example, or an extended foundry, for us to come regularly so that, trust is built, so that we continue to have fun, and it's not only based on the extraction model. Every time you come, I want a donation. Every time you come, you got to volunteer. Everybody, on the last day said, it's so fun, even Martin and Charles, I remember, right, in one of our events, one dressed up as a hot dog, the other one was a salad, right? So, till I'm like 80 years old, I'm going to continue to keep this picture. I'm going to show them, right? So in that space, right, where everybody is in their own skin, literally, that is where scalability comes from. Because you, Colin, multiply with me, and even my parent company, Eslo Luxottica, they donated like 7 stories of furniture. And when Ernst & Young saw that, they said, hey, Yvonne, do you need more furniture? And Gary gave his billboard and stuff like that. So suddenly everybody asked, where did all these resources come from, right? It's about multiplying. It's about being catalytic. It's about playing together so that we continue to build our friendship and bring our passion into a bigger space. Yeah.
Thank you. So give them the playground, build the trust, and let the magic happen.
Very simple.
Maybe I can add on another dimension. So I'm looking at the questions. I think there's also a question around, is it always necessary to scale to be sustainable? So I thought as we go to the next panelists, Dawn, Adriana, what are your thoughts around the topic of scale?
First, which I wonder if the scaling question comes from someone who's had interaction with government. Because government's always like, okay, this is great.
Most likely.
How do you scale this, right? And that's because government deals with all of Singapore. So our interest is always something that can be broadly applied to every citizen I was just saying to somebody, that's why we're often much more slow and much more careful when we make decisions and give resource. That's just the nature of what the government is authorized to do. So this scaling question absolutely is what we grapple with. And I would just say this maybe more personally, that I think if you accept the challenge of scaling, then also accept that the pace at which you scale will shift something about your organization culture. It is inevitable. I remember reading a business case study once, and those of you who are in business will resonate with this. I think it was a US airline company, if I'm not wrong, that was doing very well at a small scale, made the deliberate decision that they wanted to scale broadly across the nation, but at, I think, 6% growth, as opposed to being able to go to, they had the capability, they had the customer base to grow even more, but they kept it at a particular percentage so that they wouldn't lose their DNA and their culture. They were very deliberate. They wanted to hire the right people. That means they can only scale that much. Yeah. So I guess my orientation to this is scale at the pace you can, not at the pace you can't. And be mindful of what that changes in your culture. Is it something that you can bear? Yeah.
Thank you, Dawn. Jenna?
Okay, so I think I can share on the experience of EFI about scale. So what we do, the strategy, I think me and my fellow co-founders, Pelvindran and Sonia, I think we had a discussion. I think we came to a point to confront hard truths that actually EFI on its own is really not sustainable. And for innovation, I mean, on its own, on alone, we are not sustainable, because what we have to do is, for an innovation to be sustainable, we have to create an ecosystem that allows that innovation to be sustained. So the approach that we actually adopt in trying to scale is not just scaling up the number of families, but scaling out. Scaling out means working with very like-minded partners who's very interested in the EFI approach to share that funding together with them, for them to be able to learn the approach of EFI and trying to pilot them in their own different neighborhoods. Yeah, because I think the approach of EFI requires a lot of unthinking, because it's a lot of power sharing with communities, which can also cause a bit of discomfort, especially when, as professionals, you're very used to having control and planning for communities, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to unpack and unlearn, and this approach cannot just be simply learned by just scaling up, because you need to have that space for you to be able to learn and elicit the rich learnings. Yeah. So there was, even for myself, my Pel and Sonia, the team, there was a lot of things that we had to unlearn, even though we were really quite seasoned in terms of asset-based community development. So maybe I just share an example, right? So I think as part of the savings matching, for families to be able to be eligible for savings matching, they have to submit basically a screenshot of their savings matching by a certain date. But unfortunately, one of the iteration, for one period, 2 of the participants are unable to actually submit them on time. So I mean, from a very typical program point of view, you didn't submit on time, hence you don't get the savings matching. So we didn't want to be punitive. So what happened was that there was a lot of discomfort, because we asked ourselves, so are we going to be punitive and actually not give the families, even though they actually made the effort to screenshot the savings? So what we did was that instead of doing that, we had a gut check. We said, okay, is this a decision that the families can make by their own, since they are actually accountable to one another when they share about the progress for each other? So we brought back the question back to the families and asked them, so a few of us have submitted like a savings matching screenshot late. So what should we do? Can we? Is it fair that some people submit late? So do we not give? So I think a lot of the participants during that meeting said that no, I think it's okay. There's a lot of valid reasons why people submit their things late, right? And I think what we can do to mitigate this is actually to check each other. So the families actually check each other and they actually chase each other for the savings matching. So after that incident, right, the savings matching are all on time, because they have a WhatsApp group and they actually say, okay, I've submitted. So it's to ensure that everyone actually submits them on time. So the solution actually comes from the families themselves. The question that we ask is this a decision that can be made by the families? So this is actually a lot of unlearning on our part and trying to unthink.
Thank you, Adriana. Love the idea of unlearning, right? I mean, as we work with communities, we realize that there's so much that we do not know, and in fact, there's things that we need to unlearn as we work with communities. And when we speak to community practitioners, community development practitioners, I think one of the frames or reframing that is happening is, instead of thinking of scaling, can we think about proliferation, right? So it's not about taking one model and expanding it in a very typical business case study across the island or even regionally, but how do we find like-minded people who can take it and find their own path in the different communities or organizations or geographies that they're located in. I'm looking at the questions again, and maybe I'm going to put Dawn a bit on the spot. So the question reads, one reason why the space is small is because the government is very capable and does a lot. How should grown-ups and charities think about which spaces to go into that government is not able to go to?
Well, I would say thank you, first of all, that the acknowledgement that the government by and large is quite capable. I would say that comes at a cost. That comes at a cost because what that means is us, as now I wear my citizen's hat, will say, here's a problem, government, solve it, right? Which is why we've generally had a more consultation and feedback kind of relationship. So it's a good question to ask. How would grown-ups know where to start? And just start from the people around you, the situations you find yourself in, the problems that you're seeing that perhaps haven't yet been noticed. We saw this a lot during COVID, that the government had to act, but it was acting very much at the national policy crisis management level. Yeah. But where a lot of the ground-up activity was is in the neighborhoods with you and your community that you're part of, just solving everyday problems. When masks ran out, just sewing masks. I honestly don't even know how to sew. So to have people just contributing skills that I can't even imagine, those are the kinds of things you look out for. But that said, I think let me also put some onus on the government, that the government does need to learn to curb its enthusiasm, maybe. We are a problem-solving government. We see a problem, we jump in, we solve it. That is what we're very good at. But what got us here won't get us there, right? So I think your mention of the word power lands for me. That the government is very powerful. We're involved in every aspect of your life as a citizen. Even in your bedroom also, we've got money for you if you want to, do things. So we are a very proactive government.
Thanks for the plug.
And I think it's a crisis, an issue. Okay.
It's an issue.
It's a big issue. Actually, if anybody can solve that problem, please go ahead and solve it. So I think the government does need to learn also to be wise about when to say, okay, we can act, but should we? Ask the question, should we act? And learn to maybe take a more facilitative role rather than a decision maker role. Maybe the last thing to say is the government often comes out, our political office holders will come out and talk about all the big issues that are keeping us awake at night. I alluded to the sort of fertility crisis. It is a crisis, can I just say, that we're facing now. And it articulates these issues all the time. So maybe keep an ear out for what the government is articulating as top-line priorities, because it means those are the things that government has some levers for, but not all of them. Which is why, for instance, I think mental wellness has been something that has come up a lot. Of course, we have a national mental wellness strategy, but it's really, really helpful if on the ground, all of us can be trained to be observant and notice when someone is struggling. You don't want to wait till there's a crisis for the hospitals and clinics to kick in, right? I had a chat with Wing Mui. We go a long way back to the mental wellness issues as well. You don't want to wait till someone reaches that level and needs major acute level intervention. All of us can have a role to play. So those are the kind of angles I would advocate. Look for what the big issues are, and then just keep your eyes open for what's going on around you and where you can play a role.
Thanks, Don. If I can stay with this thread a bit more. When you think about the shifts that we need to take, because when we think about thriving communities and a sustainable community, we're thinking longer term, right? What are the shifts that you think needs to happen within government and between government as well as people, private sectors as well? And I'd love to hear from the rest also in terms of what do you think are the shifts that is needed?
Me first, okay. Many, yeah. So I think, so on the government part, I alluded to one already, which is that the government is often the decision maker and needs to be, because that's what the government is mandated to do. But it does need to also learn when it needs to be just a facilitator, convener, and partner, and enable partners to play a more active role. And I also like the word used, initiative, to enable initiative, ground-up initiative to happen. So that's one on the government part. I think I'm seeing the shift happen on the part of businesses as well. There's a big push, of course, to not just profits and to see yourselves as an integral part of the communities that you're in. And then on the part of, I guess, citizens, there's a wonderful framing. Someone by the name of John Alexander, he wrote a book called Citizens. And he frames sort of big shifts in how citizens are moving. We started out as a subject people, right? There's a king, and you're the subject, and you just take orders. And then we moved to a consumer type of orientation where we can pick and choose, and we can buy service. If I don't like you, I will sort of not vote for you or not buy your service if it's a business. So we are consumer. I think Singaporeans are kind of consumeristic. We can be even in social areas. And then the last mode that he offers is this idea of being citizens, that we see ourselves as players in the system as well. So I think this is the shift that we're in now, from the subject and consumer mindset to one where citizens also see themselves as active players. Let me just stop there maybe and just cede the space to others.
Yvonne?
I think if I can request one thing, it is really to shift our lenses and to redefine how we measure success, because we are all outgrowth kind of society. So usually our single metric is how do we maximize profit? How do we make the most money, right? How do we scale up, right? So that it's a room full of something. But to be honest, I think this yardstick has again, got us so far, right? But now it's about community. Now it's really about human impact stories, where we talk about mental illness, right? Mental wellness. On the last day of Peace Center, this mother came up to me, Valerie, right? And she said, hey, thank you so much for what, this whole thing represents. She says, my kid, it's actually an anxiety kid, right? So she was on heavy meds. But when she started coming here regularly, right, she feels so loved, so conducive, no judgment. She says she doesn't even need to be on meds anymore. So on the last day, right, when we were, closing at 9 p.m. and said, sorry, we're not accepting any more people coming in, this little kid stepped forward to help us be door bitches, okay? She said, no, and then she said, I can do this. And the mom said, no, the adults are very fierce, very aggressive, right? They will scold you. So she wore the t-shirt, a playpen t-shirt, and she said, no, I am this, all right? It's okay. Then she turned to me and she said, it's so funny, on the first day we opened our door so big, ask everyone to come in, nobody wants to come in. Now on the last day, we keep chasing people out. So funny, Auntie Yvonne, right? I mean, these human impact stories, how do you measure it? How do you measure the fact that our thrift store is now on Series A funding just because he set up a dream thrift shop? And one of our graffiti artists is now being used by Adidas with a big poster / in Orchard Road. I mean, we feel like super proud, like parents, right? Yeah. Trying to birth all these. But if I've gone to Dawn and said, okay, can you measure us? We would have failed at every single count. So please try to redefine what success looks like, because community building, it's a long-term effort, and you can see it on the smiles on their faces, how bonded, you can feel it. It is not something that we can put on an Excel sheet. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Great point. And I think a conversation that will lead very nicely into our next panel segment, where we think about how do we define success. So time runs out really quickly when having a good conversation. On behalf of all of us, I just want to say a big thank you. Yvonne, Adriana, Dawn, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure this is the start of a conversation. And as we network and we engage with each other throughout the day, hope we can all learn as well as unlearn together what it means to be a thriving community here in Singapore. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our panelists. Let's give them another round of applause, and thank you, Charles, for moderating the session. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please get ready now as we dive into some real and practical insights on building the sustainability of your social impact organization. But before that, let's take a look at this short video clip.
Great day. Hi, what can I do for you today, sir?
Hi, my name is John. I appreciate what you do for this neighborhood. Your pizza is making a difference.
Well, thank you, John. When we opened, we were just a small shop with a simple mission to...
Right. Listen. I represent a large institution, and we're interested in buying a significant number of your pizzas.
Oh, okay, great. Well, our cheese pizzas are $10.
Great.
And then
I've done some number crunching and determined that we're going to need 10 per month, and I can pay $8 per pie. Oh, and I'll need them to be Sicilian.
Oh, but the Sicilian pies are more expensive. That won't cover my costs.
Oh, I'm sure you can just find someone who will be willing to make up the difference.
Who?
Well, maybe do a couple black tie events, honor some people.
I'm concerned about the impact on quality at that price. And, my reputation is at stake.
Of course, but just imagine how much more efficient you would be with 20% less than what you should be given. But I'm sure there's plenty of other pizza places around here. If it's too much work.
It's okay. You know what? I've got an oven that's been on the fritz, and maybe the steady business will help pay for repairs.
Oh, I would love to help with that, but 100% of what we give to you must be spent on ingredients, okay? We do not pay for overhead, okay? See, none of this money can be used for utilities, rent, marketing, pizza boxes, or your salary. Especially not your salary. No.
No pizza boxes? And how am I supposed to deliver them?
Oh, well, there's a place in Bushwick that is completely sustainable. They deliver your pizza using solar-powered drones on recycle bins.
I don't have those.
Okay. You can spend 5% on pizza boxes, 10% on dough, 5% on tomatoes, 10% on cheese, and the rest on spices. See, it's all spelled out here in this pizza-making plan.
I'm the one who knows how to make the pizzas.
Yeah, no, of course. What you want to do is just fill out this paperwork, okay? You make any of the stipulated adjustments to your business model, and then after a few site visits and several audits, payments should start rolling in about 6 to 9 months.
A site visit?
Yeah. As you see here on page 47, okay, your chef will either have to have been nominated for a James Beard Award, competed on Iron Chef, or taken anger management classes from Gordon Ramsay.
I serve pizzas. A James Beard Award, huh? Most of my cooks can't even grow a beard.
Hi.
Oh, hey. Where did that other guy go that was just here?
He got transferred to a different department. I'll be making the orders now.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. His expectations are a bit, unreasonable.
You're telling me. You saw.
I know, right? So I would like 4 dozen falafel sandwiches.
Oh, we don't make falafel sandwiches.
Well, that's what we need. And I also need you to track each and every one of your expenses on this ancient scroll. Use the feather pen. It has the blue ink. Nice to meet you. And really, you are making a difference with each falafel sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
That's you don't have to put up with that. You and other pizza places are providing a valuable service to our community, and we should be backing you up and not making you jump through hoops. Listen, I would like to order a large supreme pizza, and someone told me that you have an oven on the fritz, so here is $100 to go towards fixing that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you come back.
No, absolutely not. I only buy pizza from the same pizza place once, because otherwise I keep coming back, you get dependent on me, and that would be so.
Oh. Okay.
Wow. We can all relate to that, can't we? All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, for the next panel session, please put your hands together for our wonderful panelists. We have from the CEO and Trust Protector of Fire Tree Group, please welcome Francesco Caruso. The Senior Director of Grants Tote Board, please welcome Tan Su Yin. The Regional Head Asia Macquarie Group Foundation, Jasmine Chew. And the Executive Director of ArtDis, Angela Tan. Please take your seats. The moderator for this session is Martin. Please welcome once again, Martin.
Thank you. Please. Thanks, everyone. First and foremost, did you enjoy the video? Yes. It is so good, right? So can I just say we have an internal discussion because the video is actually quite long. It's over 5 minutes and it's hard for an event, but we felt that it's such a great video to be able to really surface some of the challenges that we all face, right? So I really like that very much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I thought we all laughed at the last one, which is kind of funny. First and foremost, thank you. We're going to push ahead with our second panel. And really, when we think about sustainability, as I said earlier, it's just how it's really important for us to think of sustainability from various different components or very different aspects of it. And this panel is really getting our donors, funders, both on different spectrum, from Tote Board to Firetree to a corporate like Macquarie, and as well as from a SSA's point of view, like what are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So I thought MC has already introduced everybody. We'll dive straight into it. And I can't think of a better person to start off than Francesco. Because he's going to lay the groundwork for us, and he's just going to throw all the firebombs first, so that we can all pick up the pieces. No,
that's why I'm here. Apparently. So, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. How can I say no to Martin? But it's a real pleasure, and it's really energizing to be here and be among doers. So. In the world of philanthropy, really, we can see doers, like many of you, and funders, like some of us here, I guess, in the room. And the video we just saw is a perfect introduction. We, in Hong Kong, made another video, only 2 minutes, perfect for these events. But really, the matter of the question is always the same. Sustainability, what do we mean by sustainability? And I'll just start by saying that when we talk about sustainability from a funder's point of view, we always think about money. So how is this organization going to be sustainable, or what is your plan to be sustainable? Well, the reality is most organizations, most charities cannot be sustainable financially. Sustainability means having donors because they cannot sell products. If I am a child protection organization, short of selling children, I cannot actually make revenues. And we don't want a child protection organization to sell any child, therefore, they depend on donors. So when you go to an organization and ask them the classic question, what keeps you up at night? Of course, the first answer, if the leader is smart, will be money. Then ask the second question. What is the second reason for you to stay up at night? People. So HR always comes second. In reality, it's because of us funders that it comes second, because it should come first. Because what is a sustainable organization is one where the leader doesn't burn out, where the team is taken care of, and that requires money. So if we instead want to buy a beautiful pizza only once and then go to another pizzeria, and I'm Italian, so we have a lot. But if I find one that I like, I keep going there. So this is the matter, again, of the principle here. If you find somebody that is delivering the impact you are after, stick to them and make sure that they put people as their first reason to stay up at night. Maybe help them to sleep at night, because that's better for everybody. But really, people first, not money first. That's my first message to the funders here.
That's awesome. Being able to sleep at night is very useful. It is very useful. Maybe I'll go over to Suin from Tote Board's perspective. And you have been in this space for a while as well. So maybe just your opening thoughts.
Sure, thanks, Martin, and thanks for having us here today. I think Tote Board is, like SGPO, happy to be partnering with TMT, perhaps for the first time in a more overt way. Yeah. Really, I think what struck me from today's session so far is I think what Min said about trust. I think that's where I'll start. I think we can talk about sustainability, about program sustainability, organization, financial, which is what this panel is likely to cover. But perhaps it just boils down to understanding, which then leads to trust. And how do we build this understanding? I think it's easier said than done. I think as Tobot and as many funders, we recognize that social impact organizations, whether you're a ground-up charity, social enterprise, you know your business the best. We as funders want to be helpful, but we also need to learn. We need to know and understand how you work. And really, I think how to develop that understanding is really thinking about how not to trip each other up, but understanding the different things that we focus on and the areas that we look into in order to do our funding. So really between, perhaps rather than, I think keeping, being able to sleep at night is one important thing, but perhaps the second thing is on how to develop this understanding and trust in order to make this funding relationship sustainable. You're right, you're not going to sell children for financial sustainability, but perhaps there can be a sustainable way of having a through train of funders, many of whom in this room today. And I think it starts first with relationships and engagement. And I perhaps, the positive example, TMT, Martin has been great. I don't know how many of you in this room have had coffee with Martin. I think undoubtedly once you have coffee with Martin, well, you end up here. No, I just, really, truly, I think the work that you do is tremendous, and many of our friends here. But really it's about engagement. And for funders, that is about engaging not just at the point your funding is due, but that you need money, but perhaps on an ongoing basis. I think we must have talked for years before this, I think the Foundry partnership came about. And sometimes it's about really getting feedback from funders, understanding where we're coming from, and also understanding the governance requirements that we have. Yes, it's not easy getting money from government or from Tobot. We try our best, but the recognition is we're using public funds, and there is a certain level of governance. Beyond engagement, I think it's also about considering what is the measurement of the impact of the work. And much ink has been spilled about impact measurement, how do you finance this study and so forth. I think where we're coming from is that we want to simplify, even commoditize how to describe, collect data, and talk about impact. I think many of us want to do good. I think many organizations, individuals represented here, you have a very thin, a very small setup, 1, 2 permanent people on staff, bunch of volunteers, and why would you want to spend time, resources, money on impact? And we feel the same. Even as Tobot rolls out impact measurement for our entire grants portfolio in 3 years, it's been a challenge. Because even though I as funder want certain reporting, if my grantees are not able to do so, do I cut funding? I think the answer is no. We want to be helpful. I think we need to work together to understand what is possible. We don't want to make requirements too onerous. I think as Tobot, we want to make sure that we also help the ecosystem develop. And one of the tools is perhaps how to do impact measurement, how to write up a theory of change, how to collect data, and share that in the wider context, whether through toolkits, through a playbook, otherwise. We're going to be doing things to help out through the sector leads, as well as through various people who have already been on this impact journey like TMT. I think that's incredibly, incredibly important. So I think much has been said. Really, I want to say that you guys know the best, those who are leading from the ground. I think we want to talk about sustainability of programs and so forth, and really that flexibility on how funders get involved. It's not always one single funder, it could be, as Francesco has brought up, but perhaps creative ways of thinking about how can we all play this role in the ecosystem to make things better. Thanks.
Thanks for that. And it really comes from different aspects, right? I think for grantee partners, for charities, the ability for us to ensure that some of this relationship on a longer term basis, more sustainable relationship, instead of one of the phrase in our pre-course, someone said that, never treat donors as an ATM. I think someone said that. So, which we agree fully, the journey we walk. But I think on the funders, I think for us as funders as well, it's also for us to learn. I remember in the design industry, one of the challenges is that we keep asking design companies to submit briefs, like, do project work to pitch an RFP. They put in all the work and they don't get selected, but they actually put in the work, and it costs them money to generate 3Ds and so on and so forth. So there was a huge move to say that, can we fund the brief? Right? Just so that they don't come out of pocket to a certain extent. I think for us as funders, there's a conversation we can have. Like, if we want social impact measurement, for example, can we fund that on top of the grants that they're applying for. I think those are the conversations we can have. Jasmine, from a corporate point of view, from a corporate funder's point of view, you look at a variety of things. So from a company's point of view, when we talk about sustainability, when we tell grantee partners or charities that, hey, we need you to be sustainable, what do we really mean from a corporate lens?
That's a very good question. I think really the first thing that you would like to consider is that there are different types of resources that a corporate can bring to the table, especially as an international corporate. Of course, financial support is one, but there are different kinds of assets that you would like to unlock as well while working with a corporate. And even before you work with a corporate, to consider what is it that they would like to bring to the table as additionality. It's a very common, question that funders within the corporate will talk about. What is it that I can bring to the table? What difference can I make? Because truly, I would like to think that most people in this room, we are laughing about the video because we have been through a conversation or relationships with such a funder before. But most of us are the converted, and we are trying to progress along the journey and to make change. But even so, making change is difficult for a funder, for a corporate funder as well. So an overnight change is not easy. And you need to remember that for a corporate funder, the resources are equally lean as well within our organization in terms of supporting you. So you also need to remember that first, you need to think about the different resources that you want to unlock. Secondly, you need to remember that the funder that you're dealing with, so-called funder, will always have a funder to report to. So the person who is signing off, unless you're the principal or you're the person with the money, you always have to play the role of bridging the gap. So when I ask you, the TMT, or ask any of the organizations out here, what are you doing? What are you trying to achieve? What is scale? We are in the process of actually trying to understand what you do and try to bridge the language and convert it into something that our funders will understand. So we are trying to work with you on that. So bear with us in terms of, and I guess it is very important, leading to the third point in terms of communications. It's very important for you to, at the onset, be more open in terms of what you need and what you want. Just a show of hand, how many of you, in speaking with a new funder, actually start with saying, I need funding for my organizational needs, and not dive into, this is a program that I have, I would like you to support that. How many of you would actually go to a funder and say, can you support my organization? Just a show of hand. That's really great. I mean, I'm seeing more hands. And the reason why I'm asking is because even as a funder, when I speak with organizations that we have supported across a multi-year basis, and this is our commitment, we do support organizations on a multi-year basis, they come back to us with, can you, in the next cycle, think about this program? And then I'll be asking them like, but why don't you, since we have worked with you for some time now, what about thinking about what your organization needs are? So I think the shifts and the transformation really need to take place through different lenses, understanding the people that you're working with, the partnership, what can that entail across the spectrum.
And I think for us who have played multiple roles, so some of us have applied for grants before, now we're on the funding side, the spectrum of this conversation is interesting. Right? Because when we go into a funding conversation, we really tend to think, what is the one conversation can help us unlock that resource? And there are so many different archetypes of funders, right? Like you say, from a corporate point of view, you do have your own limited budget to a certain extent. Some funders are willing to fund operating costs, some don't. I mean, so that's the reason why we're playing that pizza video. We can always refer back. Angela, in running out this, you will get into those conversations. You will see different kinds of funders as well. So from a sustainability conversation, how does it work for you in terms of what funders are looking at, and then in terms of how you work with your funders and thinking about what is it that you do that allows you to be sustainable as an organization in all sense of the word?
So I'm not sure how many of you know my background, but I spent about 11 years at the Arts Council giving grants. And part of grant applications is always never 100% funding. They have to articulate what is the sustainability plan. So it's very funny, in the last 2 years running at this, I now have to ask myself this question, and I have to make sure it works, because I had so much faith that companies, charities have to be sustainable in the way they think about programs. And so that is actually what keeps me up at night. Francisco is absolutely right. It's not just the money. It's not just the people, but at the end of the day is whatever we start, can we sustain it? I wanted to maybe answer the last question first, which is what does sustainability looks like to us at ArtDis? I often tell my team that the impact that we're looking at is not the 400 clients we work with. It's an ecosystem impact we need to see happen. And that is where the shift will then happen in terms of a social impact when there are more people that's on board the cause that we believe in. And in order for that to happen, it means that we cannot be the only players in the space of arts and disability. And we have to foster a lot more sector collaborations. We have to ensure that we have partnerships that will have a life of its own, even when someone steps away or even when we step away from it. A little bit about ArtDis. We are 30 years this year. We were founded by Professor Tommy Koh with really a very pure intent to create education and livelihood opportunities for persons with disabilities in and through the arts. So within the last 30 years, there's been so many changes within the organization, but the last 6 to 7 years has been most transformative, I think, when we grew from a 4 to 5 head count to about 16 head count right now within the organization. And I think it's really because as a whole ecosystem, there is just so much groundswell of interest in supporting persons with disability that how do we be most impactful with aggregating all of that interest and channeling that into even greater collective impact. So in the work we do, we work so much with partnerships, NGS, all the institutions, the cultural institutions, we work with them very closely because we believe that at the end of the day, we cannot be as a small charity churning demand within ourselves. We need more players outside of us to be creating demand, to be creating interest, to be creating programs that further support persons with disabilities. So at the end of the day, sustainability for us is not just about sustainability of the program, but whether how much shift, in the larger ecosystem can our program make. And that's to the second question. To the earlier question about how do I think about sustainability in the way we operate as an organization. Financially, I think we just have to diversify, and everyone in this room knows that. But it's one of the toughest things to do. It's almost like playing math on a daily basis, which is what happens at night for me. I think, okay, this funder is going to stay on for 3 years. This funder is like the last one, he's just going to give you a $10,000 check and that's it. And it's constantly playing mental sums. But I think it's having to acknowledge that that's the nature of how we have a very diversified ecosystem of givers. And how do we then begin to sort of understand what motivates their giving and plan that into your own fundraising strategy. So in my mind, for example, I have buckets of who are my long-term partners, who are my short-term partners, and who are those that I sort of think about as my incidentals whenever I know I need something that maybe it's a small amount, but they will be able to step up. So having this, but this is only possible when I am able to cultivate relationships. That was my comment. I think that funders should never be treated like ATMs. It means that I don't go to them only when I need their money, because it's durational. Social impact is durational. Today, I might not need their support because I have someone that is supporting this program, but it doesn't mean that in 3 years' time, I don't need their support. And because we're always time-strapped as charities, we tend to only focus on who are our current funders and not think in the longer term, what is the 5-year plan? How do we plan ahead when a funder steps away? So relationships.
Francesco, you want to?
Yeah, just a great conversation. So this is a people's industry, and it's leaders like Angela that inspire us. So we don't have to think about sustainability. They are thinking about sustainability all the time. So I agree with you. There is not one donor, and we are very rarely the only donor. What we want to do is to catalyze the work we are doing with an organization and try to bring more donors along with us. Antonia here is a witness of what I'm trying to do in that sense. This is why we co-started ACF, for example. But in some cases, we have been the only donor, and this is typically when somebody comes to us with an idea. And they demonstrate that they actually know the context, they have the skills, they have the vision, they have brought together a small group of people, volunteers or staff, and we want to protect them from some other funders that might go and ask them to do this, that, and that. So we want them to learn and experiment and fail and learn from those failures and improve before they approach other donors. Because that's what provides them the safe space to really build a stronger organization long term. But if they are not able to tell us where they're going, why they're going there, what they measure, then it's impossible. So the trust that we have to build is really the crucial point, and trust takes time. And sometimes we just have to take a chance, though, when we feel that the person is right or that team is right. If we don't take a chance as funders, and of course, not all funders are the same, so the buck stops here. So I don't have anybody to go and explain why we failed. So we can take that responsibility and get an organization to the point when they can come to you or to you, because they will have learned and they know what to measure. But also, to Yvonne's point, not everything is measurable.
Yeah.
So we also need to understand that if we don't go to that community, if we don't understand that the community has a sense of ownership, we cannot ask the organization to tell us that. So as funders, we are responsible to work together and sometimes to measure the quantitative, but also the qualitative. And the qualitative has to measure in a different way. If we only want quantitative, we should only fund science and not social science.
That's a good one. Now, the question I think that will be on top of all our minds, especially for those of us who are applying for funds, is that, okay, we talk about this whole portfolio of funders, right? There are different types of funders. There are those like you who are willing to last the distance to a certain extent, or I love the idea that you're actually sometimes helping to protect them from some funders who actually sometimes often derail what they're trying to do because of measurements and so on and so forth. So I think it cuts both ways. I think we also need grantee partners and charities to be able to educate funders, to help lead funders as well on their journey. I think we at Majurity Trust, one of the key things that we've come to terms with is that there's so much we don't know. So every conversation with the grantee partners is also a learning experience for us. Oh, actually we never saw it that way. Maybe we can change our funding mechanism to a certain extent. How best do you think folks in this room, many who are grantee partners applying for funds, how can we work with funders in a way that can maybe nudge funders along? Is there a way that we can come to you? Is there a way that we can work, say, with Tote Board or a company? How best do you think we can do what we do to help funders see the work that we do differently and maybe fund us on a much longer term basis? Maybe I'll go to Shu In first and then...
Sure, thanks. I think it goes back to what a lot of what was discussed today, not just coming to us when you need the money. I think oftentimes, beyond relationships, I think it's also the understanding, and I'll be the first to admit that actually government doesn't know the best. A stat board like Tote Board doesn't know the best. We're making efforts. I have a dedicated team that goes out to understand, and I'm speaking to many of you here today, to understand really what is needed and where the gaps are and how government can play a part. But beyond that, I think it's also about acknowledging that actually we have processes and we have asked for KPIs in the past, and it takes time to change. It's not an overnight thing. There's certain risk appetite that bigger funders have, whether it's corporate or whether it's government, quasi-government. And also I think about understanding how we work. We will take time to change, but similarly we do hope that we can continue to be with everyone on this journey. So really I think it's about having conversations, often not just about funding, but it's understanding about the work you do. We are definitely coming to the ground to understand a bit better. And unfortunately, we are not like Francesco, where we are also where the buck stops. That would be most ideal. We also have reporting to our boards and the forces that be.
Jasmine?
Exactly right.
Talking about having bosses.
Talking about having bosses and people who are not necessarily, always very familiar in terms of what we do day in and day out. I think that communications and just reaching out is very important. So I think building trust and the relationship is very important. But I have to acknowledge that I know that it's not easy. So don't take it personally if you feel like after this, for instance, this forum, and we go out there and we want to connect, but we don't really have the chance to have in-depth conversations. I think it's more of, understanding what are the different, tiers of reaching out and establishing the relationship. So I think LinkedIn is very good for that. So if even today we can just add each other, that's the first step. Because maybe the next conversation won't happen until 5 or 10 months or even a year later. And please don't take it personally, because even between Dean and I, even amongst funders, we say always that we will meet up, but it's just so difficult for us to meet up. And it's not personal. It's just that, we are all running on very lean resources, and we just have different priorities depending on how and when it is. But I think it's very important to establish that relationship at one point or another. And I wanted to mention that I think communications is very important in terms of building that trust. So we have our grantee partners who have come to us and say that, hey, we are actually having an issue. And that actually is so helpful, because we don't wait until the next reporting period and say that, hey, what is happening? Why didn't you tell us earlier? And all the alarm bells will go off, because once again, the buck doesn't stop with us. So we always have reporting, and we need all the signatories before we can release the next funding. So it has always been very helpful if we build that relationship and trust to be able to have these ongoing, constant conversations, because we would like to be helpful rather than seeing it as a problem, as a failure. I think acknowledging mistakes or challenges is something that we all don't do very well. Generally, it's not just the not-for-profit organizations. As any type of organization or even individual, this is something that we're learning. But I encourage everyone to do that. And just very quickly, talking about resources, like what Angela was saying, recognize what types of funders you have. And I think as a corporate, our employee really plays a huge role in terms of being able to contribute and fundraise out of their own pocket and initiative. And actually, to me, that's always the best unrestricted funding, when you need some sort of support versus business to business or organizational to organizational. So these are different aspects that you can consider as well.
And that requires a level of engagement with the corporate, right, on a much deeper level beyond just a funding proposal to a certain extent. Francesco, how about you? What can we do from a grantee partner's point of view that can come to you as a principal, as a foundation, that will trigger you to think, you know what, I should really journey with this organization on a longer term basis?
Great question. So we employ a team, obviously. When I say the buck stops with me, it's not that I just decide by myself. In fact, I feel very accountable to my team and to all our partners. And it's very important to always know who you're accountable to as a funder. Otherwise, we just lose our minds. And it's a risk that is always there. That's what keeps me up at night. So we only employ people that have been doers. So they have started nonprofits or have run nonprofits, so that they understand the pain points and they can build a relationship in a faster way, maybe. So when any of you comes to Firetree, meets Nikki or somebody else in our team, I think really is the discussion about what you're doing, why you're doing it, who you work with. So what are your other stakeholders? Are you trying to do it all by yourself? Singapore is a very different place from anywhere else in Southeast Asia or anywhere else that I know, because the government is so present, the government is generous. There is a lot of funding, not only for nonprofits, but also for people that are in need. Everywhere else I work, if the government is not taking anything from you, you're lucky. Forget... I was going to make a comment about that where I lived for 15 years, but I won't. So just be honest, be transparent and share your challenges. If you tell us you're perfect and you're great and you only need our money, not only we feel like an ATM, but we just don't believe you because we've been in your shoes and we know that there are challenges. So come to us with your challenges and let's see how we can help you to deal with those.
Well, I like that very much. You see, coming to funders with challenges allow the funders to actually have a far more involved way of looking at things.
Yeah, that's talking about Firetree. I wouldn't recommend to go to most funders that way. So
I think all the funders here today, we speak the same tone.
Yes. But I mean, as Angela said, there are different funders, so you need to know who you're talking with. Do your homework, know who you're going to talk with, and appreciate that if you're talking with a grant officer, they might be the best person in the world, but they have to talk with somebody else, and therefore what they ask you depends on what they will be asked. They are your friends, though, until proven wrong. So,
unfortunately, it's proven wrong many times. But,
yeah, but I think you can also be proven right, and they really are your friends.
Yes,
so
that is
work
true.
with them and understand that they need to be reporting to somebody else, and therefore some of the questions, like you said, are not their own questions. They just know what they're going to be asked. So they want to work with you to provide the right answers.
Very cool. Angela, how about your experience? You were a funder before, but now, applying for funds, you see these different archetypes of donors. So what works for you in maybe one or two ways that allow you to develop the kind of relationship, the kind of longer term relationship with funders or specific funders?
I think it's very, very important to get your funder invested in the development of your program. It means, like what she says, right? It's not just at the funding stage and at the reporting stage, but if it's going to be a 2-year program, what are some of the growth milestones, that you can actually invite the partner into the space, observe the program, meet the clients, speak with them, so they also understand the challenges that happen on the ground. And that also means that they become a bit more amenable if along the way you tell them that, hey, I'm going to have to make a bit of shift in my program. The outcomes remains the same, but there's trust that we are all working towards the same outcome. And so a lot of these conversations that you often have with grant officers, and be it whether it's with the government or the corporate, it's bring them along the journey. So we're quite intentional with that, with some of the programs we do where, for example, we have a lot of the arts program where we have quite a few events, public events. We identify partners that we know will like to come, meet the artists, speak with them. But we also know partners that prefer not to go to that kind of events, but want to go into the classrooms. They want to be in where the dirt and the grime is. I often say that my center in Bedok feels like a bit, I don't know what's the term for it, but a bit ghetto. But some love it. And I'm like, okay, let's go there. You get to see the underbelly of what, hardcore work looks like. So bring them on a journey, but understand also what they would engage with, And I personally, when I was a grant officer, I really enjoyed going onto ground, because when I visited the programs, I spoke with the beneficiaries and the artists then that we were working with. It informs my own understanding of how the program is shaped, because very often what's on paper is completely different from what you see on the ground. And if that disconnect is already happening, imagine the shock when your funder looks at the report and says, oh, that's not what we agreed on.
Yeah.
But that can be mitigated when there are all these, I wouldn't call them site visits, but I call them journey visits,
Learning journeys.
Learning journeys. We have to educate the funder, the partner, that these are the challenges on the ground.
Yeah.
And this is how we work alongside them.
I often do wonder, I think for some of us who are funders in this room, it would be interesting if funders conduct a learning journey for grantee partners to see what funders do and the things that we think about. It's like a reverse learning journey.
They will all quit.
Huh? They will all quit. They will no longer apply funds. Never know how the sausage is made. Time is going fast very quickly, so just make sure that if you have any question from the panel, please do ask on the QR code on the Mentimeter. And as the questions are coming in, I thought I'll just pose this just for all of us. Is it therefore, we talk about this whole idea of portfolio of funders, which I like, the different archetypes, so the whole idea to build a sustainable organization isn't to work with just one type of donors, and you sort of need to develop the muscle to work with different types of donors. But is it unreasonable for us to hope that all funders will fund operating costs? Is it unreasonable that we would like all funders to be able to say, you know what, I will fund the next first 3 years, but after that, if you're performing well, we'll continue funding and not move the funding elsewhere? So I guess the question that I have is there like a ideal state for us from a funding point of view that we can all get to? Or do we think that, you know what, it's almost going to be impossible to dream of that because every funder have their own different principles, different bosses to a certain extent? I guess the question is for us more as funders, less so on the grantee partner side of the house. What can we do as a funding community to really get to where our ideal state is?
Well, I think we have to talk with other funders. Ideally, funders that are similar to who we are. So, for example, family offices or private foundations. Let's try to explain why we fund in a certain way and be patient. It takes time. Learning journeys can be done to go to ground and visit the artists, but it can also be a learning journey among funders and really to understand, why am I funding in a certain way? Why do I keep funding this organization? Let's go talk to them together. Let's try to understand. And we have actually seen through our partners a lot of funders transform the way they give because they learn. It's not that funders are set in their ways. Yeah. Sometimes they are, but we are. But in reality, we do learn. A good funder keeps learning and keeps evolving. And so can we believe that 100% of funders will be giving unrestricted multi-year? Probably not. But I think there will be more and more that do it that way. There will be more and more that want to be more innovative. And sometimes innovation means impact investing or some sort of blended philanthropy. But in reality, multi-year, trusting somebody to take our money and spend it wisely is more transformational than a lot of other things. But it'll take time, and it's a community. It'll also need to always start from a point of view of understanding other funders and understanding that collectively we can best help charities. Collectively, we can best help those who do. And I can fill the gaps of what maybe Thought Board or a corporate funder can't, but then they can come with bigger money later and take less risk. So it depends. It really is a collective work that we have to build.
There's a whole ecosystem on its own to a certain extent.
I'll just chime into what Francesco just said. I agree fully with what you said. But I think maybe I'll come from the starting point with, actually funders are people too. It's hard to believe sometimes. But behind the grant officer, behind the manager who approves, behind all of us seated here, we are people too. We all have our own passions about what we would like to support on a personal basis, but sometimes we are constrained by our agency or otherwise organizational structures. But we do want to make that change. Rest assured, I think many of us were gathered here because we do feel that it's important for us to play this role in this ecosystem. But I think to the question that's asked directly, would funders fund operating costs? I think the answer is traditionally no. I think Thought Board has funded operating costs in the past, but it's in conjunction with program costs and other things. But really, I think back to what Francesco said, which I really, really liked. I mean, the idea of learning journeys, I think there are many funders and we're not created alike. I think we had a successful collaboration with Temasek Foundation last year, and private sector, public sector, and now people sector. I think that's where the magic happens because, for instance, Thought Board generally cannot put money in the hands of a ground up. We cannot give direct funding like that, but others can, and if we can partner and do so, it's all about our time horizon. Where do you come in, when, and exactly what? And really, if I can just go back and end up, we are people too. We do feel for the causes on the ground. We are constrained. Please understand our constraints. But really, we do want to make that difference and help.
And the ability to actually map it across all the various funders is going to make a huge difference because every funder has a very specific focus. Jasmine, maybe a quick chime in from you. Same thing, like.
Yeah, I mean, I really agree and really nothing much to add, but I think what will be really helpful is to recognize your levers. So the Majority Trust is a good example of an intermediary where they can help maybe accelerate your conversations, maybe help introduce and open networks. And I think in each of your potential funder or existing funder, there will always be levers that you can pull. Like I said earlier, there are so many different types of resources within an organization, a funding organization, that can provide, and you would want to think about what kind of assets you're trying to unlock. So I think there's no doubt that the landscape is evolving, and it has evolved very quickly, and there will be more organizations recognizing that they can fund the operational needs. I guess the challenge is back to the M&E, the reporting. What is the output versus the outcome? And that has always been a challenge traditionally within the industry, because it requires a lot more resources and research that to educate all of us in terms of how we can come to terms with it. So I have no doubt that it will get there, but it's just more of recognizing what you want to prioritize once again.
Very nice. And maybe to end up our time, Angela, I'll let you have the last say. Maybe just for all of us in this room, right? You have been in this. What would be one advice or one tip based on the conversation that we have? When we think about sustainability for organization, what would be your one tip or one advice to the folks in this room?
What just comes to mind is we can say no. I think as charities, very often we are so strapped for resources that sometimes whatever comes our way, we say yes to it. And then you look back and say, oh dear, what did I sign myself for? And it's just, for example, $5,000, but you need to produce so much reports that it doesn't justify the ROI in terms of your manpower resources. And so it's important that as leaders, we understand that it's important to say no when we feel it just doesn't feel right. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about whether or not we can fulfill the outcomes, but it's also our team, it's our staff, it's our very limited resources we have on the ground that they don't burn out because the leader always says yes to money. It's not easy to say no, honestly, to all the funders. If you give me money, I'll say, okay, yes. But I've had to say no. And I think we need the courage to say no and believe that if we push on, we will find the right resources for the right type of program and needs.
That's a great final thought for all of us. We talked about trust, a portfolio of funders, different types. And as we progress and as we work together, both as a funding community as well as a grantee partners community, the whole idea of the ecosystem coming together, it really takes both hands to clap. And probably, I think I'll use Suin's point to close, that we're all humans after all. We all feel for the cause, we are all tied, our hands are tied in certain ways. But if we spread that scope, there's a lot more different funders can work together to come in on a much longer term, a much more sustainable way for all the various organizations. On that note, would you please join me to thank our panelists? Thank you so much, guys.